"You'll eat after everyone else," my daughter said, like I was some stray animal, not her mother. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up, walked to the kitchen, and took the entire roast off the table. And as I walked out, their stunned faces told me they'd finally realized who they were dealing with. You know, I never thought I'd live long enough to be humiliated in my own daughter's house, the house I helped her buy, by the way. I'm 79. I've still got my wits about me, and my knees aren't what they used to be, but I walk just fine without a cane. I read the news every morning. I still sew. I make the best pot roast west of the Mississippi, and I've never asked anyone for more than I gave. So imagine this, me, sitting at the corner of a long oak dining table, the air thick with the smell of rosemary and butter and meat I'd marinated for 2 days straight. A full family dinner. My daughter, her husband, and my 3 grandkids all gathered around, chattering, scraping their plates with forks. My roast, perfectly carved, was the center of the table. And I was still waiting for a plate. Everyone else had been served. Twice, in fact. And I sat there, smiling politely, hands folded, trying not to notice how my stomach growled. No one offered me anything. No one looked my way. When I cleared my throat and asked if I might get a plate soon, my daughter didn't even look up. She just said, "You'll eat after everyone else. You always wait. That's your thing." Like I was some family tradition. Like I was some dog that eats scraps off the floor after everyone's had their fill. No one flinched. Not even the kids. One of them snickered. I looked across the table at the man who married my daughter. He was already 3 bites into the second helping of my roast, smacking his lips like it was his first time tasting real food. I had helped pay for his culinary school tuition. He never finished. I looked back at my daughter. Her once bright eyes were glazed with wine, and the smugness in her tone was too practiced to be a joke. She meant it. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not with rage, no. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I simply stood up, slowly, my napkin falling to the floor without a sound. Everyone paused, forks mid-air. I walked around the table, straight to the center where the roast sat in its glistening brown glory. The air smelled like thyme and pride and every hour I'd spent prepping that meal. I picked up the entire platter, roast, vegetables and all, and I walked out the front door. Nobody moved. Not a single soul said a word. I didn't even hear footsteps behind me. I got in my car, set the platter gently on the passenger seat, and drove back to my small apartment, the 1-bedroom above the old pharmacy downtown, where no one visits me unless they need something. When I got home, I lit 2 candles, put on a record, Ella Fitzgerald, her voice honey smooth, and ate that roast in silence, piece by perfect piece. Each bite tasted like freedom. Like self-respect. Like a line finally drawn. But I wasn't done. You see, I raised my daughter better than this. Or so I thought. I gave her more than I ever had. I raised her alone after her father passed when she was just 10. I scrubbed bathrooms at night and sewed clothes on the weekend to keep her fed. I paid off her student loans. Helped with her wedding. Helped with the down payment on her house. And for what? So I could be treated like unpaid help? No. No more. After dinner, I poured myself a glass of iced tea and sat with my laptop. I opened the shared family budget spreadsheet, the one my daughter forgot I still had access to, and reviewed every single contribution I had ever made. I documented everything: mortgage help, utilities, the times I bought school clothes for the kids, even the money I gave them to fix their plumbing last winter. It added up to $87,312.56. I wrote the number down. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Then I drafted a letter. Not legal, not yet. But enough to set the tone. I let her know that I would no longer be assisting with anything financial. That I was cutting off my portion of shared utilities, holiday funds, and family trips. But more importantly, I told her she was now formally uninvited from my will. That includes her husband. And unfortunately, her kids too, though I may reconsider that part someday if they ever find their manners. I sent the email at exactly 9:01 p.m. At 9:03 p.m., she called me. I didn't answer. At 9:10 p.m., she texted. Was that really necessary? At 9:12 p.m., I replied. Was telling your mother to eat after everyone else necessary? Silence. That night, I slept better than I had in years. But still, I wasn't done. The next morning, I took a walk downtown and stopped by a small catering business run by a sweet woman named Tara. I'd done some odd help there before, nothing paid. Just shared some of my recipes and lent her my cake stand for weddings. She looked up when I walked in. "I'm ready to work," I said. She smiled. "Doing what?" "Cooking. Teaching. Something that reminds me who I am." She gave me a warm look and said, "I think we have just the thing." That was the beginning of the real payback, the kind that isn't loud. The kind that doesn't require shouting or broken plates or revenge posts online. I would rebuild my identity without the people who tried to erase it. I would become more than the roast. Tara handed me a crisp apron and showed me to the back of the shop, a small but spotless kitchen with silver counters, 2 commercial ovens, and a stack of clean baking trays. I hadn't worn an apron in years that didn't have some kid's crayon stains on it or a gravy blotch from someone else's Sunday mess. This one smelled like fresh linen. She looked at me with kind eyes and said, "You don't need to prove anything. Just cook like you always have." That kitchen became my little sanctuary. I wasn't a burden or a maid or someone to ignore at a table. I was respected there. Valued. It started slow, a batch of rosemary rolls here, a tray of carrot muffins there. Tara put my lemon chess pie on the menu. It sold out in one afternoon. Word spread. Not about me, not yet, but about the food. Something about it reminded people of their childhoods, of grandmothers who'd long passed, of Sunday dinners they hadn't tasted in decades. Funny, isn't it? The very thing I was mocked for, home cooking, was now making someone else money. And it made me feel whole again. Meanwhile, back at my daughter's house, things were unraveling faster than they could fix them. The first thing to go was the food. Apparently, no one realized that I had made all the freezer meals, prepped the school lunches, and filled the pantry with coupons and bulk deals. Without me, takeout became the norm, expensive, greasy, forgettable food that left everyone irritable and bloated. Then came the family drama. Without me smoothing things over, their little cracks turned into fractures. My daughter's husband was working late more often. My granddaughter started skipping volleyball practice. The youngest got in trouble at school for yelling at a teacher. My daughter called me 3 times that week. I ignored all of them. Then came the message, just one line. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. I let it simmer, like a good stew. Let her sit with it. Back at Tara's, things were heating up. A local paper came by to do a feature on heritage women in business. Tara asked me if I'd be part of the photo. I almost said no. But then I thought about it, really thought about it. For years, I'd been the one behind the camera, behind the scenes, behind the roast. Always invisible. Always last to eat. That's what they taught the kids, that I was supposed to be quiet and grateful and out of the way. So I said yes. The photo ran the next week. There I was, standing in front of a tray of fresh biscuits, my hair pinned neatly, my hands in flour, smiling softly. And guess who saw it? My daughter. She didn't call this time. She showed up. It was a Saturday morning, and I had just pulled out a sheet of apple hand pies from the oven. Tara was out back with a delivery. I heard the door chime and turned. There she was, standing in the doorway like a wet cat, her arms crossed, her lips pressed tight. "Hi, Mom," she said. I wiped my hands on a towel and nodded. "Well, look who finally remembered where I am." She rolled her eyes, like she was the one inconvenienced. "I just came to say," she paused, eyes darting to the pies, "it was kind of childish what you did." I tilted my head. Taking the roast? Or deciding I'd rather eat alone than be humiliated? She didn't answer. I continued, "Because childish is telling your 79-year-old mother she can eat after everyone else in her own kitchen." My daughter huffed. "You're blowing it out of proportion. It was a joke." "No," I said, calm as ever, "a joke has a punchline." That was a command. She stood there, shifting from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable. I could see the little girl in her, the one who used to cry when I cut her toast wrong, the one who clung to my leg in parking lots. But this woman standing in front of me? She didn't cry. She dismissed. She minimized. She took. "I need help," she finally said. "The kids are falling apart. He's never home. I'm tired. I miss you. I let that hang in the air like smoke. You don't miss me, I said. You miss the service. She blinked, stunned. That's not fair. Isn't it? I took a step closer. You made me feel like a guest in my own family. You laughed when your children disrespected me. You treated me like a free cook and a live-in babysitter. You forgot who I am. Silence. Her lips trembled, just a little. Then she said, so what now? Are you just done with us? I didn't answer right away. I looked at the pies. I pulled one off the tray, set it on a plate, and handed it to her. You want to fix this? Start by remembering this. I am not your maid. I am not a burden. And I sure as hell am not eating last anymore. She took the plate in both hands like it weighed 10 pounds. I added, you want me back in your life? Then you and your family need to learn how to earn me. She left without finishing the pie. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was finally awake. That afternoon, Tara told me a local event planner wanted us to cater a retirement luncheon. They want Southern comfort food, she said. I smiled. They came to the right place. As I diced sweet potatoes and rolled dough, I thought about the legacy I was finally shaping, one made not out of obligation but of choice. One rooted in respect. My daughter had a long way to go. And I wasn't sure yet if I'd let her back in. But one thing was certain, the days of waiting to be fed, of being last in line, of swallowing pride with mashed potatoes? Those days were gone. Tara's little shop kept growing. We started getting more catering requests. People didn't just want food, they wanted my food. The kind that tasted like something had been healed in the oven. Tara made sure they knew who was behind it. She even printed a tiny blurb on our menus. Home-style comfort from the hands of Miss Evelyn, raised a family, raised a business, and still raises the bar. That was the first time I'd seen my name in print in decades. It almost made me cry. But not everyone was cheering me on. Word had gotten around, and not just among neighbors. My daughter found out people were talking about me. At school events, parents were whispering about the roast incident. At her office, someone had clipped the newspaper photo and pinned it to the break room wall with a sticky note that said, "She's the real chef in the family." That must have stung. A week later, my granddaughter, the middle one Madison, showed up at the bakery. She looked uncomfortable, like someone had dropped her off but didn't give her permission to speak. She was 16, tall like her mother, but with softer eyes. She ordered a slice of chocolate cake and stood by the window, pretending to look out, fidgeting with her phone. I waited. After a few minutes, she walked over to the counter and said, "Grandma. Sorry, Miss Evelyn? Can we talk?" I nodded and motioned her to the back room. We sat by the sink where I had just finished peeling apples. She looked down and muttered, "Mom told us not to come. She said you're being dramatic. But I miss you." My chest ached. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetie," I said gently. She looked up. "I didn't stop it, either. I laughed that day. And I've been thinking about it ever since." Now that hit me harder than I expected. I took her hand. "You don't have to carry shame for your mother's choices. But I appreciate your honesty more than you know." She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "You were always the one who made birthdays special. You fixed my dress for winter formal. You're the one who taught me how to make pancakes. I don't like how things feel without you." I couldn't speak for a moment. Then I said, "Thank you for coming. And for remembering. You're welcome here any time, but not in secret. You tell your mom you came. And you tell her what you told me." She nodded. That evening, Madison posted a picture of us on her Instagram story, me holding a peach cobbler, her grinning next to me with the caption, "Best chef I know, yellow heart." My daughter saw it within minutes. The next morning, she came storming into the bakery. "You're turning my daughter against me now?" she snapped. I didn't even blink. I didn't turn her. She walked in on her own. "Maybe you should ask why she did." She scoffed, arms crossed. "This is ridiculous. You've made your point." I looked her square in the face. "No, I don't think I have." She shifted. "What more do you want, Mom? Do you want me to get on my knees and apologize in front of the town?" I smiled softly. No. I want you to understand that you humiliated me in front of your family. And when I took back my dignity, you tried to spin it like I was the problem. She opened her mouth to speak but paused. You raised me to be strong, she said finally. You taught me not to take crap from anyone. Maybe I just thought you could handle it. I can handle it, I said. But that doesn't mean you had the right to dish it out. Silence. Then I added, respect isn't a one-way street. You want my place back at your table? Then you need to make room for it, and serve it first. She bit her lip and turned away. You really aren't coming back? I already did come back, I said. Just not to your house. I came back to myself. She walked out without saying another word. But the ripple had begun. The youngest grandkid, Jason, came by next. Brought a hand-drawn picture of my bakery with best grandma ever scribbled in green marker. The oldest, Samantha, sent me an email, a full apology. Said she didn't know how bad it had gotten until she saw me on the local news. Oh yes, the news. That happened in the middle of all this. One of our catering gigs was for the mayor's office. They were so pleased with the food, they did a special segment on local legends of flavor. I wasn't even nervous when the camera crew showed up. I wore my apron, pinned my hair, and smiled like I was right where I belonged. They asked, "What made you start this at your age?" I looked dead into the camera and said, "Being last at the table too many times teaches you to build your own." That clip went viral on local social media. People started coming into the bakery just to meet Miss Evelyn. I signed flour-smeared menus. I got a handwritten note from a woman in her 30s who said I inspired her to leave her controlling husband and open her own home-based meal service. And yet, my daughter stayed silent. Until the day she walked into the bakery with a casserole dish. "I used your old lasagna recipe," she said. "Don't get excited, I burned the corners." I took the dish, peeked inside. It wasn't perfect, but it was earnest. She added, "I didn't come to argue. I came to listen." And so we sat in the back room, for the first time in months. She told me things I didn't know. About the pressure of raising teens, about her fear of turning into the kind of mother who didn't see people. She said she felt herself slipping, and taking me for granted had been part of that. I got caught up in feeling like the queen of the house, she said, and forgot who built the castle. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just nodded. "That table's not the same without you," she whispered. "I know," I said. "We didn't fix everything that day. But we made a start." She asked me to come back for Sunday dinner, not to cook, not to clean, not to wait, just to sit. Just to eat. First. I told her I'd think about it. I still haven't said yes. Some things take time. And I'm in no rush. I didn't rush back to Sunday dinners. Not because I was bitter, but because I had finally learned the value of peace. My days were filled with things that made me feel seen. A steady rhythm of baking, early mornings, cheerful customers, and laughter with Tara in the back room. It was a quiet kind of joy. The kind no one can steal unless you hand it over. But my daughter kept trying. She came by once a week, always with something in her hands, banana bread she'd overbaked, a crooked attempt at my sweet corn casserole, once even just a thermos of lukewarm coffee. Each time, she'd stay a little longer. No pleading, no guilt-tripping, just slow and steady presence. She even asked if I'd join them for Thanksgiving, just for dessert, she said. "You don't have to help. You don't even have to bring anything." I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. Meanwhile, something funny started happening in the bakery. Customers started bringing their mothers. Like clockwork, every Saturday morning, a new mother-daughter duo would walk in, order something warm, and sit by the window. I heard snippets of their conversations, gentle teasing, long overdue apologies, confessions over coffee. It was like the scent of real food made people remember how to love each other better. One day, a woman in her 50s grabbed my hand and said, "My daughter and I didn't speak for 6 years. We made up here, over your peach crumble." I smiled and told her, food is a love language. It's just that some people forget how to speak it. But not me. Not anymore. That week, Madison came in with her 2 best friends. Teenagers, full of giggles and thrifted fashion, trying to act grown. I let them sit at the window and gave them free refills of lemonade. Later, I overheard Madison say, she walked out with the roast. Like, the entire roast. They were shook. They laughed. Not mockingly. Admiringly. To them, I wasn't the maid or the one who nags. I was the grandmother who took no nonsense and still baked better than anyone else in town. They left me a little note folded on the table. Thanks for being a badass, Miss Evelyn Sparkling Heart. I saved it in my apron pocket. That night, I went home, warmed up a bowl of gumbo I'd made for myself, and sat by the window. I watched the wind shake the last of the orange leaves from the trees. My house was quiet, but not lonely. I thought about how I used to wait for the phone to ring. For a visit. For some kind of thank you. Now? I waited for nothing. I was full, not just of food, but of my own purpose. Still, when Thanksgiving came, I found myself pacing around the kitchen. Tara had closed the bakery for the day, and I had no catering orders. I made a pecan pie, just out of habit, and wrapped it tight in foil. I sat with it on my lap for 30 minutes, debating. Finally, I got in the car and drove to my daughter's house. The driveway was full, cars packed in crooked lines like sardines. I almost backed out. But then I saw Madison wave from the porch. Come in. We saved you a seat. I walked in cautiously, pie in hand. The living room was loud, football on TV, kids running, the smell of stuffing and gravy in the air. But then something happened. The room quieted. Every eye turned to me. And my daughter? She stepped forward and said loud enough for everyone to hear. Hey everybody. This is my mom. The reason half of you love Thanksgiving in the first place. Then she took the pie and said, Come on Mom, your seat's at the head of the table. For the first time in years, I sat first. Not last. Not off to the side. First. Dinner was lovely, a little too salty here, a bit overcooked there, but the company was better than it had ever been. My daughter asked me about the bakery. My son-in-law didn't roll his eyes this time. The kids actually passed me their plates and said thank you without being told. Madison sat beside me and whispered, See? You flipped the whole script. I smiled and took another bite of sweet potatoes. Later, after dessert, my daughter pulled me aside. I'm not perfect, she said. But I'm trying. You showed me what happens when people are brave enough to stop being walked on. I nodded. And you're brave enough to admit you were wrong. That counts too. She hesitated, then said something I didn't expect. We're thinking of selling the house, she said. Too many memories tied up in it. We want something new, smaller. And well, we'd like to help you invest in expanding the bakery, if you're open to it. I blinked. You'd do that? She laughed. After everything? I should. You've already shown us what real value looks like. I left that night full in every sense of the word. Not because I finally got to eat first, but because I'd finally taught them why I should have. And I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't begged. I hadn't thrown a single insult. I'd just taken the roast. And reminded them, once and for all, whose recipe it was. It's funny how something as simple as walking away with a roast became the turning point of my life. Not because it was dramatic, though it was. Not because it humiliated them, though it did. But because it was the first time in years that I chose myself. After that Thanksgiving dinner, the rhythm of our lives shifted. My daughter no longer spoke to me like I was a burden, and the grandkids treated me like a living legend. They asked for recipes. Madison even asked me to teach her how to roast a chicken properly, not like Mom's dry one, she joked. The bakery grew so much that Tara and I opened a second location. She came to me one evening with a spreadsheet, hands shaking. We can afford to do it, she said. Barely. But I won't do it unless you say yes. I looked at the sheet, then at her, this brilliant, bold woman who had once been a shy neighbor, nervously knocking on my door asking if I needed help carrying groceries. You're the best partner I've ever had, I told her. Let's do it. We signed the lease 2 weeks later. I brought my old rolling pin to bless the new space, the same one I'd used to make my first pie when I was 19. It still had a small burn mark from when I dropped it near a stove coil. That kitchen became a new kind of home. More women started coming by, older women, especially. Some came to buy pies. Some came just to talk. One woman, Edna, sat with me for 2 hours over a slice of cherry tart, telling me how her daughter hadn't called her in 4 months. She didn't cry. Just stared out the window, the way I used to. I listened. Then I said, let them miss you. Go live. Go do something so bold it leaves a trail. She came back 2 weeks later, grinning. I joined a Zumba class and booked a cruise, she said. You were right. Let em miss me. We hugged, and I slipped her an extra tart for the ship. The bakery became a sanctuary for women like us, the ones forgotten, sidelined, taken for granted until we decided we weren't having it anymore. We even hosted a monthly event called First at the Table, a long table supper just for women over 60. No husbands. No kids. Just us, eating first, laughing loud, drinking sweet tea and saying things we've been holding in for decades. It was beautiful. One day, my daughter showed up at the shop holding a binder. She looked nervous. I've been thinking, she said, about what you said. About not having to wait to be served. I want to show my kids something better. She opened the binder and laid it on the counter. I want to invest in the 3rd location. Under one condition. I raised my eyebrows. Oh. You keep it in your name. It's your brand. I just want to support it. I stared at her. For a moment, I saw the little girl I used to braid hair for on school picture day. The one who used to say, I want to be just like you, Mommy. Maybe some part of her still did. You sure? I asked. She nodded. It's your legacy, not mine. I want to honor that. We signed the papers 2 weeks later. 3rd shop, all under Miss Evelyn's table. She paid for the new ovens herself. And for the grand opening? She catered the event. Made roast beef sliders. Used my recipe, and gave me full credit on the menu card. When she handed me a plate, she said, first bite's yours, as it should be. It was a small thing. But everything had changed. Months later, I was sitting on the porch, sipping tea, watching my great-grandkids play in the front yard. Madison had gone off to college, and she called me every Sunday without fail. Jason came by weekly to help with deliveries. My son-in-law even started asking me for help with his chili recipe. One evening my daughter sat beside me and said, you know that day, the roast, I didn't realize what I was doing. I was so wrapped up in trying to prove I was in control. I thought making you wait your turn was just setting boundaries. I smiled but said nothing. She continued, but I see now, that wasn't a boundary. That was cruelty. And you didn't scream or fight. You just walked out. You taught me more with that one gesture than any argument ever could. Still, I was quiet. Sometimes silence is the best mirror. Then she said, thank you for taking the roast. For making me remember who raised me. Now that brought tears to my eyes. Not because I needed her to grovel. But because she finally understood. It wasn't just about food. It was about dignity. About not being invisible. About reminding the people you raised that you still matter. I wasn't the roast lady anymore. I was the woman who turned a moment of pain into a movement of power. And every time a customer said, this tastes like something my grandma used to make, I smiled, because I knew that somewhere, some woman like me was finally getting her seat back at the table. First. Always.